Well, gay and lesbian couples throughout the state are now waiting for a ruling on the state's same-sex marriage ban. Earlier today, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals heard arguments about whether Texas can maintain the ban. The Austin couple, whose case is at the heart of the debate, talked with Betty Cross before heading to New Orleans to watch the arguments in person.
I just saw her, and I had this very powerful feeling. This is the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with.
14 years. And many memories later, Nicole DeMettman and Cleopatra De Leon know they're now pictured as the couple fighting for the freedom to marry in Texas.
Once the question is posed, is it really something you can walk away from?
But there were concerns.
Security concerns.
Privacy concerns.
Privacy concerns. We have a young child.
The toddler is kept out of the spotlight. Scattered toys are all photographers usually see.
Did we have the time? Could we make the time? There were lots of considerations.
Including that these wedding pictures were taken in Massachusetts because they were forced to leave Texas to tie the knot.
We want our marriage to be recognized. We want our families to be recognized and protected and treated equally under the law. And that's not too much to ask.
So they put their names on the lawsuit.
Trying to pull up the Facebook group.
And created an online support team.
Plaintiffs in LGBT civil rights cases.
They're working together.
Tennessee, Kentucky, we have folks from Louisiana,
California,
Alabama.
To stay optimistic and not dwell on the 2005 constitutional amendment banning same-sex marriage in Texas.
It was devastating. It really was devastating. We were driving in the car, and I turned to Cleo and I said, wow, they really hate us this much. It was pretty overwhelming feeling of being beat down.
10 years later, the momentum has shifted. Same-sex marriage is now allowed in 36 states.
Not 50th.
Nicole and Cleo just want a happy ending for their family and their home state.
We're proud of Texas, so we don't want it to be last.
Betty Cross, KITV News.
Well, attorney David Barlow joins us tonight to take a closer look at the issue from the state's perspective and those who are affected. David, welcome.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming in here tonight. First off, let's get it started with a listen to a bit of the arguments made by the state today. Take a listen.
There are two different interests in procreation that are advanced by Texas's marriage laws, each of which is explained and distinguished in our briefs. The first interest in procreation is the interest in encouraging couples to produce new offspring. And the marriage laws are rationally related to that interest because opposite-sex couples are far more likely than same-sex couples to produce children. But there's a second procreation interest, which is distinct from the first, and that is the state's interest in discouraging unplanned out-of-wedlock births.
All right, so does the state have an argument there?
Historically, they have a very big argument. Marriage has always been under the purview of a state. The federal government doesn't issue marriage licenses. The federal government doesn't grant divorces. The state's argument that we, being the state, we're the ones that have always handled this, we're the ones that should continue to handle this, and they have to have a reason for doing it. And their historical reason has been procreation, the stable family unit, as that unit has been known for all these many years.
Okay, let's hear now from the plaintiff's side and their argument.
There are two main claims in this case: that the exclusion of lesbian and gay couples and their children from marriage violates both the Due Process Clause and the Equal Protection Guarantee. We say that we win both because it violates the fundamental right to marry and also because it discriminates based on sexual orientation, based on sex, and with respect to the exercise of a fundamental right.
All right, how about that side?
They've got some Supreme Court precedent on their side. In 1967, in a case called Loving versus Virginia, the United States Supreme Court actually spoke basically for the first time on marriage and said that marriage is a fundamental right. In that case, it was an interracial marriage, and the state of Virginia would not allow that. That was the first time the Supreme Court had recognized marriage as a fundamental right. So the plaintiff's argument that this is a due process violation, this is an equal protection violation, does find some precedent there. Those are separate arguments, separate standards of review. One, I think, is more on their side than another one would be. I think the equal protection argument is easier for them to win than it would be for a due process, because in order to win a due process argument, the interest basically has to be so ingrained in our history, in the country's history, and so ingrained in our jurisprudence that, as the court says, liberty and justice wouldn't exist without it. Well, same-sex marriage is not historically ingrained in this country. That's why I think they have a better argument for equal protection.
Now, even with federal recognition of marriage, couples who are legally married elsewhere still run into a number of problems if they live in Texas, right?
Correct. In fact, part of the Texas statutes, some of them relate all the way back to the amendment in 2005, the constitutional amendment. Some of them are much more recent than that. There are actually statutes now contained in the family code that prohibit the state of Texas from recognizing a same-sex marriage that was performed out of state. So in Texas does not recognize its own same-sex marriage. Texas does not recognize another state's same-sex marriage at all.
So this debate has been going on now for a while. How much longer do you believe it'll be before there will be a ruling on this by the courts?
The argument in front of the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals today was in front of a three-judge panel. Whoever loses that can file a motion for a rehearing in front of what's called the court en banc. In other words, all 16 justices that sit on the court can hear the case. No matter who wins or who loses for that, they will attempt to appeal that to the Supreme Court. So it could be years down the road before this is settled.
All right, let's hear now from Attorney General Ken Paxton. Well, this is what he had to say about this particular situation, about banning same-sex marriage or not. In 2005, Texans overwhelmingly supported a constitutional amendment defining marriage as a union of one man and one woman. I am committed to defending the Texas Constitution, the will of our citizens, and the sacred institution. Well, the will of the people a decade ago may not be the will of people today. Texas looks a little bit like it's behind the times by not allowing this. Is the state concerned at all about an image problem here?
I don't think it's so much concerned about an image problem as it is, like you said, keeping up with the times. That constitutional amendment in Texas passed by 76% in favor of it and 24% against it. Texas is in the minority nationwide in this, that I believe they're only one of 16 or 19 states that still ban same-sex marriages. I think they will fight this tooth and nail to the very end. Ken Paxton's statement, that's his job, is to defend the Texas Constitution. So,
right, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Now, in the legislature right now, there are some competing bills addressing same-sex marriage.
Yep, there are. There are some pending to strengthen the ban on same-sex marriage. There's one that is going to be introduced that even if this were to pass, prohibits district clerks from issuing marriage licenses. Basically prohibits state officials at a local level from doing what the law says they have to do. That doesn't stand a chance. There are others that try to reintroduce just flat old same-sex is allowed in Texas, do away completely with the ban. I doubt those will pass as well. The legislature probably won't come to anything in this session because of what's pending in the federal system.
Well, there are thousands of Texans awaiting an answer to this, and hopefully be forthcoming here before long. David Barlow, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.
You too, thanks.
All right, still to come on Fox 4 News tonight.
It all comes back to the word of terror in the word terrorism, striking fear in the hearts of people.
The latest information on the terrorist attack in France and a look at how terrorists choose their targets. But first,
I think that's unfortunate that they thought that was the right way for them to go. I mean, so it cost us only $10,000, but it's going to cost them a whole lot worse.
A pair accused of stealing copper from a church air conditioning unit now face trial. You're watching Fox 4 News, first at 9.